I want to talk about so many things with you guys.
Ooh, we're honored to be here. This is awesome because we're just so all about uplifting women folk in the space, women folks, women plus. And it's just really cool to have another woman who's doing this, and about kind of like the support and giving agency. And we're just thrilled. That's really cool.
I'm so thrilled. We're so aligned in mission, and you guys are so interesting and impressive besides the podcast. Like I want to dig into all of it.
You're listening to The Other 50%, a herstory of Hollywood. I'm Julie Harris Walker. This is the podcast where I talk to successful women in entertainment and hear their stories. For this episode, I got to meet the brilliant hosts of the Sista Brunch podcast. Sista Brunch is a podcast about Black women thriving in entertainment and media careers. My two guests are Fanshen and Anya Adams. Fanshen is an award-winning playwright, actor, producer, and educator. She just wrapped up 7 years of touring her one-woman show, One Drop of Love, and she is also the producer and development executive at Matt Damon and Ben Affleck's company, Pearl Street Films. She serves on the board of the Annenberg Inclusion Initiative and on the Kennedy Center's Turnaround Arts Equity Advisory Committee. And Fanshen is also the co-author of The Inclusion Writer, which was announced at the 2018 Oscar Awards by Frances McDormand. Anya Adams is an award-winning director, most recently taking home the NAACP Image Award for Best Director in Comedy for 2020. Anya's career skyrocketed after directing an episode of Blackish in 2017, and since then she has gone on to direct the Netflix pilot Ginny and Georgia, episodes of The Good Place, Single Parents, G.L.O.W, Charmed, Fresh Off the Boat, Speechless, and many more. Basically, all of your favorite shows. This is juicy, and it is real talk. The F-bombs fly. You've been warned. And go subscribe to Sista Brunch. Although I don't even need to tell you that. You are about to fall in love. You can find us at theother50%.com for added features, photos, show notes, and the merchandise. And you can listen on Apple Podcasts and all the podcast places. Okay, here's my conversation with Fanshen and Anya Adams. Have a listen.
So let me just say, I have the host of the Sista Brunch podcast on here.
Woo! We're here!
Pew, pew, pew. So let's just so people can know your voices. Anya, say hello.
Hi, I'm Anya.
Fanshen, say hello.
Hello, everybody. I'm Fanshen.
Okay, so first let's talk about your podcast and get all that out of the way. So tell me about Sista Brunch, and it's Sista.
Sista. Yes. Sista Brunch.
White women do have permission to say sister. I
was a little worried.
You don't want to appropriate, you know what I'm saying? So like you do have permission.
I tried to put an H at the end, but I realized there's no H.
Just an A.
Sista Brunch. So Anya Adams actually you should start, Anya, because you are the originator of the...
I mean, I'm not the OG, but I come from the world of assistant directors, and I actually came up through the DGA trainee program, and that trains assistant directors. And we had, in that program, a lot of the women of color had women of color mentees or mentors. And what they would do is take us out for brunch intermittently so we could talk about what was going on for us on set, because it was a little bit different than our white counterparts. So it was a nice opportunity for us to just kind of air our grievances, talk about similar things, give each other ways to manage different situations, and just listen to each other. And so that kind of grew into I think we had it like maybe 2 to 4 times a year. And I started hosting it a lot. I'd have it in my backyard, and we'd have 20 to 30 women that would feel like, come over. Everyone would bring a brunch item. There'd be a lot of champagne and Prosecco. And then we'd sit in my backyard and talk. And usually it would start with everybody just going around saying what they're doing. And so you could kind of see the breadth of embeddedness that the women of color had in the film and television space. Because a lot of, we were hearing, well, you can't find them. There's no women of color. There's no people of color working. Where are they?
Right. And you're looking at 30 of them.
Yeah. We all are
wow.
actively looking for work, with great training or already working. So it became kind of also a networking piece for us. And it has grown into a very strong kind of DGA core group of women in the assistant director world that have, are working to affect change within the DGA. So it's really become a really great group that came out organically to support. And Fanshen, you can take it from there.
Yeah. So, and I was maybe a year into working at Pearl Street Films with Matt Damon and Ben Affleck, and I was working on the inclusion writer. It might have come out publicly already, and
I don't think it had, Fanshen.
Wow.
It hadn't.
Okay.
Yeah, it was not out.
Okay. So I was working on that, and we were getting exactly the pushback that Anya referred to, which is people saying, you're forcing us to hire people that don't exist.
Right.
And Anya invites me over to Sista Brunch, and I'm sitting in this yard listening to woman after woman after woman who has talent and experience and knows 5 other women that also have all of those things. And I was like, here it is. Here's the response right here.
What are they talking about?
What are you talking about? And so I think shortly after that, I called Anya and said, this should be a podcast. That way there are no excuses. No one can say that these women don't exist, because we're going to be introducing them to the world and making it clear that and that's what I loved about, at that point, Sista Brunch had expanded beyond just DGA training, or just the directors or
assistant directors, rather. Yeah.
But so that was great too, because we knew we wanted to highlight, especially women working in roles that people outside of the industry may have never even heard of and never realized that were accessible to them. Like we had a digital film loader. So that was, it was just a given that we were going to do this. And then we got incredibly lucky that Anya had a relationship with Christabel Msiabwadi, who is a producer on NPR, does NPR, just has a couple articles in British Vogue, and she's amazing. And we both were like, we want to make this thing happen, but somebody else has to do it. Somebody has to tell us where to be when, similar to how you tried this morning, Julia, and it still didn't work.
I see, it's hard. It's not easy. I get it.
And she just stepped in, and then the podcast.
We had this little meeting, and she was just so like invigorated and inspired and motivated. It just made us even more excited about it. Yeah. And also, like, when Fanshen brought that idea to me, I was so excited about it myself, because I come from a small town in Canada on Vancouver Island. I never in my wildest dreams had seen myself as a director in this industry at all, much less an assistant director. And had I known about it earlier, because I was trying to find out about film and television in high school, but I just didn't have any kind of avenues or ways to find out. And this podcast is such a great way for young people to find out what's behind the scenes, because there's so much. Yeah.
And it's the same for me going into development, because it's one of those roles where there is no one way. So it's really challenging because of that. But it is also, it feels very exclusive, right? Because you tend to be in that executive suite. And I love having guests on like Kelly Edwards, who worked at HBO for a long time, who can just pull back the curtain, right? And just be like, we are normal human beings who like creativity. One thing that we've noticed about a lot of our guests, and this is true for me and Anya, is that we have a theater background. And that's been so great too, is letting young women of color know if you're in a theater background, you have a lot of skills that transfer directly into working in film and TV. So just for all those reasons. And we had an amazing first season. Like we did. We fell in love with every guest, and even more so. And like when people ask you, like, "Oh, who's your favorite guest?" No way.
I'm always in love with the last person I talk to.
Exactly.
Every time. Every time. God, it's such a great mission, and I have the same one. Because don't you wish you knew all this when you were trying to figure out what to do with your life? Like all the years trying to figure it out, and also breaking down the Hollywood generational nepotism.
Yes.
That has been the access to those jobs, and all those jobs that people don't even know exist, that they might be perfect for.
That's the thing that we were like so excited to share was like, yeah, what does that number 3 costumer do? And like, it's like in school, I'm talking to my brother about this. He has 2 kids. It's like they're exposed to like lawyer, doctor, scientist, blah, blah, blah. But like, there's just so much out there.
And to the nepotism point too, I love how our range of guests, all of whom make it very clear, even in the episodes, that they are here to help uplift other Black women who are, who want to learn and come up in the industry versus this, typical kind of white male position, which is I'm just going to hire my friends because that's who I'm comfortable with. And therefore the, status quo maintains, being all white men. And so that also is so important, is like every woman makes it really clear that she's accessible. And that was important to us too. We talked really early on about, are we going to go for the Ava DuVernays of the world? Or are we going to go for, like the women that are really, and not to say, obviously she's working too, but like the women who are working without recognition, credit. And we really, we knew that's where we wanted to go because that makes it accessible.
And it's still so interesting, like not to just talk to the celebrity filmmakers who everybody knows.
More so a lot of times.
Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about your journeys.
Oh, yes.
So Anya, let's start with you.
God.
So you came up through the AD track. How did you even get into the AD track?
Well, I went to school for psychology. I was going to be a psychologist. My mother was a doctor. And I was like, I don't want to cut cadavers, but I like the psychology part. So I was going to do that. And then this group called Up With People came to my university.
You know, every time we talk to someone, somebody's like,
people are like, wow.
You guys, I went to New York to study acting.
Okay.
I may have to cut this out. My evangelical Christian father told me, New York is the city of sin. You will definitely be going to hell. If you want to do theater, the only thing you can do and still go to heaven is Up With People.
Oh my goodness.
And you were like, no,
I'm in New York City.
You're like, I'm going, here I come.
Well, where are you from, Julie?
Seattle.
Okay, so we're like so close. I was in Victoria, Vancouver Island.
I used to Christmas in Victoria.
Oh my God. That's so cool.
Okay, well, go ahead. Up With People.
So
Up With People came to my university.
Going to heaven,
I'm going to heaven now.
Definitely going to heaven. Ooh, what a relief.
Oh, yes. Okay.
I was going to be a psychologist. I started my peer counseling thing in school, blah, blah, blah. And then Up With People came and I decided to interview for them because it seemed really exciting. The performance aspect I really was drawn to, but also like traveling with students from around the world and like host families and not having to do homework, like just digging in,
It's super wholesome. High on life.
Yes. It's so funny that your dad said that, because Up With People was born out of the moral rearmament, like foundational values. They were like on Mackinac Island in the 60s. And like, it was like very, Glenn Close used to be a part of Up With People, FYI, and she like denounces it. But it was a very strong kind of Christian moral kind of group of people, and everyone needed to be a certain way. And in the 90s, that feeling of everyone being a certain way was still there. That underbelly of like the Christianity was kind of torn away, because it was very difficult to be that way when you have people from Africa and, all over the world participating in this group and not, requiring a specific religious background to do so. You were inviting all these different ideas and people. So anyway, it was very exciting. I did that, and I traveled with them for a couple years. I did a bunch of jobs, ended up as a cast manager. Up With People kind of imploded because it's nonprofit. And I was in Denver kind of trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And I discovered I wanted to take my skills from traveling on the road as a dancer, a production manager, a cast manager, and move that over into film and television. And what I discovered was the Directors Guild of America trainee program. So I applied for that, became an AD. I was very excited. I applied for New York and LA. I didn't get into the New York program. I got into the LA program. And my first show out of the gate was Malcolm in the Middle. And that was the year of the Twin Towers, like the whole thing. It was like a really seminal year for me. But anyway, like that was my first year in film and television, like as a working person. And I moved all the way up through it to become a first AD on CSI. So I did a bunch of different shows. And then as a first AD, I jumped around a bit. And when I landed on the show called Mindy Project, the Mindy Project, I, at that point, was trying to decide what I wanted to do because I loved ADing. It was a bit creative. It was a bit like directorial. And like the natural kind of direction is to go to UPM, unit production manager. I did not like that job. I was not interested in battling with crew about budgets and like, it was not interesting to me. So I was like, if I'm staying here and I want to leave ADing because I was getting kind of a little bit bored with it, what do I do? And it was directing. So I asked Mindy Kaling if she would give me an episode. She said, what else have you done? I'd love to give you one. What else have you done? I hadn't done anything. And so at the end of that season, I was kind of poached by Blackish. A friend of mine was starting Blackish. So I said, I'd love to come there. Would you consider allowing me to direct? They said, absolutely, come on over. And I still had in my mind, I need to show that I want to do this. I can't just expect that it's going to happen for me. So although I've seen it happen for others where they're just like, hey, can I have it? And they're like, yeah, sure. I knew that wasn't going to happen for me. So I did a short film called Lemonade Mafia. It starred Marseille Martin. I truly love that family. They gave me their skill and their love that helped create Lemonade Mafia. I showed that to Kenya Barris, and he was like, okay, we'll give you an episode. And so from there, I basically made the jump. And my first year of directing, I was so blessed because I did my Blackish episode. It was like in March. Then they went down for hiatus. Then I came back and I did 2 episodes of the show on YouTube Red called Youth and Consequences. And then the director of the pilot of Blackish, who I'd worked with as an AD, was starting a new show called The Mayor with Brandon Michael Hall and Yvette Nicole Brown. And he gave me an episode. And then I met Melvin Marr because of a director I'd worked with on Blackish, Christine Gernon. She was the producing director on Speechless. So she introduced me to Melvin Marr, he produced Speechless and Fresh Off the Boat. And he gave me 2 episodes. So my first year of directing, I did 5 episodes of television, which was amazing.
Okay, that is a little bit unheard of.
Yeah, it was like insane.
But you don't know Anya Adams. That's the thing. That's how she does things.
You were just off and running. I just knew this now.
Was. Yeah.
That's incredible.
I mean, it was like nothing I'd ever experienced. But also, I would say this, and I feel like I'm an intuitive person. And if you are an intuitive person, when you move into the line of energy that is correct for your world and your body, you'll just fucking go. And that's what happened to me. AD was like ancillary. And then once I clicked into directing, it's where I'm supposed to be.
Oh my gosh.
Because that's an unusual jump too, isn't it? From first AD to directing.
Yes. It's not.
Right. It usually goes off on the producing track.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Amazing.
Yeah. So that's my little story.
If you look at your IMDb, it's like all the shows that you love.
Yes.
Or all the shows that I love. I am your demographic.
Oh, good. Oh
my God. This is what's so amazing about working with Anya. And I love that for our guests is that they also have this co-host that has this same trajectory of so many of our guests, which is starting off as somebody that has no connections in the industry whatsoever. And just knowing that they want to go. I, on the other hand, had 2 big ass connections in the industry, which is that Matt Damon was my first boyfriend when I was 9 years old. So speaking of nepotism,
you gotta choose them when you're young. You gotta
I'm like, yo, I got full on nepotism for days, but
you can pick them.
But it does also go to show you, as Anya said, that there's one thing to be, young white men, which Matt and Ben were when we grew up together, who want to do this thing. And a very different thing when you're a woman of color or you are an LGBTQ person, right? And so we all got to watch this trajectory of the two of them go from our very serious drama theater production. You know, we had this amazing theater teacher and we were together all the time. You know, we kind of did theater all the time and all of us wanted to make it, but it was never surprising to any of us that they made it, both because they're talented and persistent, and also because they were white men who had resources even at the time that the rest of us didn't have. But I also am thrilled to say that I did a lot of other things with my life that for an actor was really important. And even our high school teacher stressed this because I left theater for a year to go play tackle football on my high school football team. And all the
what now?
Yes,
I know.
I was a wide receiver.
Now?
Yes.
What?
Yeah. I was a wide receiver. I loved football growing up, and I played with my older brother. And when I got to high school, I was a cheerleader while he was on the team. And I was like, I should be on that field. And I started telling the coaches. The next thing I knew, I was in football summer camp and played a season of high school football.
Okay, hold on.
Right?
Okay, so now I've placed us in the same generation.
Yes, good.
Were you the only girl doing that?
I was the only girl doing it. Yes, I was. Yeah. Yep. I was. They started doing like talk shows and stuff like that. And then I got to meet, there was another girl in New York who was playing and she, my goodness, she was ostracized. So it was great. They kind of put us together to, kind of encourage each other. But yeah, there were not a lot of girls across the country anywhere doing it. So yeah.
Oh my God. Okay. Carrie.
Anyway, but I say that to say that my one day after theater class that I couldn't go to because I was in practice, some students from the theater class said that our theater teacher had made this speech about how important what I was doing was for actors, and that you really should not, as an actor, stay only on the actor path or only hone your craft by just doing scene study all the time, but that you needed life experience. And I was like, okay, that's cool. So I was like, that's good because I like life experience. I went to the University of Michigan and started off as a theater major and didn't love the theater department. And so I ended up as a Spanish major and teaching Spanish in a high school. I joined the Peace Corps. I lived in West Africa as a Peace Corps volunteer for 2 years, and then came back and was in the Peace Corps Fellows program, which is the Peace Corps has these fellowships if you can kind of continue your service after you return. So I went to New York, taught in the South Bronx, and did my MA in teaching English as a second language. Did that for a really long time. But I was also the theater teacher, or the after school stage manager with the productions, and always staying close to theater. And it was my students in that school who said, "We love you. We're so lucky to have you, but we know you want to be doing this too. Go for it." That's the most amazing thing. Yeah, so I moved to LA in 2001, and I remember I got in touch with Ben, and I was like, could I crash on your couch? And of course I get to LA and it's not a couch. She's like living in this mansion.
You can have a wing.
Pretty much.
You can have the West Wing.
Yeah. And again, though, I then literally spent 10 years of my life coming up against the deep limitations of the entertainment industry and not understanding, for example, the Black experience and how vast it is, and the diaspora experience. And so the agents and managers had no idea what to do, and they'd be like, well, we're sending you out for this role, and I'd have to clarify if I was going out for Black or white, and determine how I was going to wear my hair and how I was going to speak in the audition, and just 10 years of that. And then meanwhile, being close to these friends that are having this very different experience, and they're trying to help, but it's not appropriate, it's just like,
right.
It's, in fact, thank God I almost was in G.L.O.W, and I dodged that bullet. So not as the Jennifer Lopez character, but anyway,
but at all.
Oh Lord, we might have to take. No, we can keep that. So anyway, I went to school. I decided, this is bullshit. I can't. I'm coming up against folks that are just in these tiny bubbles, thought bubbles, right? And around race and racism and sex. And
did you spend any time at the beginning of that thinking, oh, it's me, I have to get more skills or get better at auditioning? Did you spend any time on that before you're like, hold on, it's systemic. What is this?
Up like nobody's business. And I suck. And, I had one acting coach that was like, oh, you need to wear fuckable shoes to the audition. It was
everything, but we are working within a racist system.
Exactly. And
you guys are of the free to be you and me generation.
Yeah. Right.
Where we were told this is over. You're not going to face this problem.
Entirely. Yeah. Feminist, lesbian mother, she's queer. She will not allow, I need to use my descriptions correctly.
Say it properly.
Right. Yeah. Yes. So, and, it's all of this kind of, and then coming and also in Cambridge, our theater teachers would not allow, I've got photos from shows where Matt is like a nobody in these productions, and the short, fat black kid who, is the lead and killing it. Like, he's the best fucking actor in the school. He ends up, teaching community college, and Matt ends up with an Oscar for his first. So so I'm coming in here, coming with that experience and that kind of support, and being like, y'all motherfuckers is fucked up, man. So
Fanshen, can I ask you?
Yes,
I feel like it's very weird because Fanshen and I did not meet through really through the industry. We met through an Up With People friend of mine named Walter Belcher. He kind of introduced us and said, you guys might like to meet each other. You'll love each other. Obviously we did.
Yeah.
When I met you, I feel like you were in a transition then, because who you are now versus who you are when I met you is different, even though you were still working with Matt and Ben. I feel like you really
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the catalyst was my one woman show. So I went back to school, did my MFA, and really allowed myself to not think in any way possible about whether I was going to create something that other people wanted to see. That was the best thing about my MFA program, was do you, right? Tell your story no matter what. And that freed me entirely. I gave myself the gift not only of, kind of not thinking in the commercial mindset, and therefore having something important to say that ended up resonating with a lot of people, but also giving myself the gift of 16 characters that I got to establish and play, and, with dialects. And I gave myself the best gift that any actor could ever, actor then / now writer, producer, right, co-director, the best gift that you could give yourself is to tell your own story. And fortunately, at that point, I had left, in any way trying to get anything from Matt and Ben, work-wise, and was kind of like, I'm going to do my own path. And that got them back to me. Now I was in a position to be like, no, I don't really want your names on my project. You actually gonna ruin this shit. This is not, and that was so empowering. And that also led to my eventually working at Pearl Street, because we were having these conflicts around the work that I was now doing, which was very much social impact oriented and, edutainment, versus what they were doing. And they came on as executive producers of the show, but were saying and doing things publicly that were not girl.
Oh, good. I want to talk about this. I didn't know if we could. The Project Greenlight thing with
Project
Effie.
Greenlight is what, listen, that's why that straight up. So Effie was a friend.
I called it the Effie Brown Show the whole time I was watching it. I was like, we're going to tune into the Effie Brown Show. She's going to tell Matt Damon.
About to tell him. Exactly. Yeah. And that it literally was that experience of watching that, being so excited. Effie, my girl Effie, because I knew her from Film Independent Project Involve, and she was our hero in that program, and she was so accessible and wonderful. So she's coming out on this show. It's her and Matt and Ben, and I'm like, yes. And I watched that first episode, and my face just falls.
But you know what else? I feel like as a women of color seeing that show, all of us were like, fucking A, here it is.
This is
here. This is an example.
Yeah.
Any woman of color that you talk to, plus anyone that you talk to about Project Greenlight, they bring up that moment. There's so many other Project Greenlight, but that moment.
It was that collective moment. And it was also an important moment kind of in a macro way because social media meant something, right? So because immediately, Damon-splaining got coined, then that meant in the best of ways that then when I made the call to them and was like, what the fuck is going on? I wasn't the only, the lone angry Black woman. The shit was going down, right? And so all those
and you're the person they're going to listen to.
Right. But I still needed, they wouldn't have listened to me if it hadn't been for also the collective energy that was happening, right? Because I'd been saying a lot of this stuff for years. It didn't, really sink in. So that was a major turning point. And yes, that I thank Effie every time I see her. One, because I'm just like, I'm sorry. Well, I apologize on behalf of the audience. On behalf of Matt and Ben, and I'm like, they're reading White Fragility, girl. I'm pushing.
They're doing their work.
They're trying, but also just the gratitude of her saying what she said, in that uncomfortable position and
she
sticking
exposed
with
herself.
Oh, at such personal risk.
Yes.
Such personal risk.
Yeah.
And she felt it.
And she paid it.
Yeah.
And she paid it. And that is fucked up.
Do you know what else you're saying that's so interesting, Fanshen, is that, because I had a similar experience with someone I was developing something with who had a revelation about how people of color are perceived or seen, and wasn't really hearing me say it. But when when the world started going crazy, they kind of had a little bit of a oh, wait a minute moment.
Yep.
And I feel like a lot of people of color have that issue where they have people that are close to them that are white, that consider themselves allies and supporters, who don't hear us when we speak.
Right.
And only hear us when some other reaction happens some other way. And then they're like, oh, you were telling me that. You were saying those things. And you're like, I fucking been here for years. What did I need to do?
Well, that's the same thing. Your spouse can tell you something all day long.
Yeah, that's true.
Until your friend tells you.
Right.
But
yeah.
Okay. Can we talk? Did you guys see Twitter today yet?
Mm-mm. Girl, I just woke up.
I know.
Oh Lord, what's happening?
So the latest thing.
This motherfucker who's saying we can't talk about race relations anymore. This shit?
Is that what he said?
Oh, yes. Not just said it, Anya. He's literally trying to legislate that you can't get funding for federal government jobs if you talk about white privilege, critical race theory. It's
dismantling ED&I. None of it has no place in America.
America.
Holy
shit! What's ED&I?
Equity, diversity, and inclusion.
Oh. Sorry.
It's everything from DEI to EDI and IED.
No,
it's not that one. Yeah. So it's
they're going all in on it. Fox is going all in on it.
Going all in. It's so funny when I traveled with the show, and that literally is what the show is. It's examining the construction of race in the United States using the racial categories on the U.S. Census as this historical backdrop. And then juxtaposing that with my family's relationship with race, because we are everything in my family. And I fell in love with a European and felt horrible about it because I was afraid of what that would mean to my Pan-Africanist father. And so I'm constantly showing this construction, this historical construction that's a lie and random, right? And then how now in 2013 at the time, that is affecting even our closest relationships. Yeah. So we do the show, and then there's the Q&A afterwards. And it's like, I'm with the Navy and I'm talking about whiteness and white privilege. And they're literally like having riots on the campus when I leave.
Oh my God.
So no. And early on, as I was traveling with the show, actually after Trump got elected, I started noticing that they were checking my checked-in bag, and there was just no that early on.
It's
so
random.
Anyway,
what are you saying? It's random.
When they tell you they've checked your bag, like they put a little slip in there, like your bag, and it started to happen. And I've foreseen this the whole time. I mean, we all have, but what it means for what we do in the industry. I'm sorry.
I mean,
yeah,
I mean,
I am completely okay. I took a week moratorium from the news because I was watching it every morning and like and I'm in Canada.
it's too upsetting. You have to protect yourself a little bit.
It's so upsetting. I mean, when Trump was elected, somebody said to me, "This is the last dying, desperate gasps of white supremacy. They're going to fizzle out after this. It's going to be fine." And I feel like that we are really trying to douse that flame, but I feel like there are so many more racist, prejudiced people that have been emboldened in this last 4 years that it's overwhelming to those of us who are just trying to live our fucking daily lives, you know?
Yeah. Oh, the comments on Twitter today were like, "Oh, finally someone said it out loud." That was all the commentary. And I was like, oh my God.
Jesus. It's so...
Yeah, because we're tired of hearing about your plight. Yeah. I have a plight too.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, the all lives versus Black Lives Matter argument, which is
yeah. And then, you know, all those folks there was an article about the shy Trump voters. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's bad enough that we have to deal with the motherfuckers who are showing up to protests and killing people. There's also just all of our own, and which is again why including the family relationships and the ways that race has been constructed was so important in the show, because my family members are going to vote for this motherfucker. They ain't going to say it on Facebook because we've blocked them or we've argued with them, but they're still going to vote for this motherfucker. Yeah. Like, I have family members.
Yeah.
And we all, like so many of us do. And the gasp it's too powerful.
Yeah.
Which has been the problem all along. It's too fucking powerful.
Yeah, I was guilty of saying it was the last gasp of...
I did. I believed it. But I mean, this Kenosha situation just recently, and the young boy shooting two people and being defended, that for me, I cannot see how you are still supporting somebody who is elevating a teenage boy who went to a protest and murdered people. It's just, I mean, and this is a historical act. It's just, this is so public in a way that's never been so public before.
It's like the outrage is exacerbated every single day. Every single day it's bigger, and you can't believe. Like, I had a little hope yesterday when he trashed the military and suddenly people were turning on him.
Right.
And then today.
And then every day, every day. We've got a pandemic, which he has totally bungled. Right? So all these folks have died. And then we have, finally, white folks and Black folks and all kinds of folks getting together in these protests across the country, which is so meaningful. And we have him doubling down, taking that knife every fucking day and being like,
it's the doing it out loud in public
and inciting people.
Absolutely.
Unapologetic.
That Portland protest where you got protesters driving through a march. Like, how is that even? That's it's
we don't even have words. we can't. I mean, I'm in Burbank and we hung a BLM poster in the window, and the next day 2 Trump signs came up on my block in Burbank, and my kids are walking down the street like, really? You? Really?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, honestly, I'd rather know.
Oh, of course you'd rather know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Come out wherever you are.
But
it's just so devastating to know.
Yeah, it is.
And there are all the, this epigenetics that are looking at, like, because a big point that I make a lot about race is that it is completely made up, and it is, right? Like all these, DNA tests, you take them and and people are like, oh, I'm half white. And I'm like, there's no test to tell you you're white. That's literally not a biological.
It's not a thing.
It's not, right? Black too. It's certainly a thing, but it is not you cannot do DNA tests. But now this epigenetics are looking at the trauma from enslavement, right? So look, like the trauma is within your DNA, like it's actually showing up in your DNA. So it's not saying that you're Black necessarily, but it is saying that you, in all the, for these hundreds of years, these experiences, these traumatic experiences are part of your blood. And that's what's happening to us right now, right? Like, the epigenetics of these kids in school right now, whatever that is and whatever that looks like. And then on top of that, a president, which is so hard to even call him, exacerbating everything you're going through. Like, what is happening to us genetically right now?
Yeah.
And then how do we survive this, doing the work that we all do? Because they are coming after us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Hollywood, with all its statements after George Floyd, we know historically they also can easily flip because they also are continue to be represented by the haves. So they're only going to be there for as long as they can profit off of us. But oh my gosh, I did not mean for this.
And there's also still plenty of talk about how, deserving white men are losing jobs to people of color who don't deserve it. I mean, let's refocus. I do want to hear about the inclusion writer.
Mm-hmm.
What does it actually say?
So it is
include us. No.
I will include you in the inclusion writer. So it says that an A-list, so it's a template, right? So each production is different, and each actor who uses it can customize it for the production they're going into. But the general focus that has to be there is that the A-list, we say A-lister because they are in a position of power to do so, but it could be anybody. But the actor, let's say, takes into their negotiation with a studio this addendum to their contracts that says that it is important to me that you target in your hiring a representative number of people by, we say, race/ethnicity, disability, LGBTQ. And so then within each of those categories, so for disability, that would include that your auditions and your interviews are physically accessible for the people to get there. And that's where it becomes somewhat customizable, because depending on each of those categories. And representative number means, for example, the demographics of the location you're shooting in. So, so if you're in Louisiana, what's the Black population? What's the Latino population? So, and then an important part that nobody ever talks about is that if you do not hire that number of people, and we have to stress that these are qualified people, this is not quota system, this is not reverse discrimination, these are qualified people. If you do not hire them, then we have a mechanism by which USC Annenberg comes in, analyzes the data, lets you know where you failed at it, and then you give a certain amount of money, we'll call it a good faith penalty or a fee, back to, in our case, that would go to me at Pearl Street, that I would then distribute to emerging storytellers in underrepresented categories. So that's kind of the gist of it.
I love it. I had not heard that last part.
Nobody does, because
that feels important.
It's extremely important. It is also part of the pushback, as you can imagine. And it was also part of, early on, a way that production companies wanted to get out of using the inclusion rider at all, because what they would say is, well, instead of, giving you money after the fact, why don't we just give you some money up front, and then that way we can hire whoever.
Right. Let's buy our way out of it.
Right. And I'm like, well, you already do that. That's called every diversity program you have, and the shit's not working. So the accountability piece is important. You say you're going to do it, and then we hold you accountable afterwards. So, but I have to shout out Kalpana Kodagal, who is our she's a labor attorney, civil rights attorney, who crafted this language in such a way that, in the best of ways, every, Hollywood attorney that tried to tear it down couldn't find anything. And then Stacey was great about making it so that it is the easiest fucking thing you could possibly fucking do to help diversify your cast and crew. It's secondary roles, as an example. And her point was that you get people into these roles, they're on set, they're making the relationships they need to make. We're getting our minds back in shift, the mindset shifting back to white male is not the default for human. We are all human and we see each other. And I was like, fuck this secondary shit, it should be, but it was right. It was the smart thing to do for this document. It was what we needed to do. And still we get excuse after excuse after excuse not to use it.
That was my next question. How is adoption?
Still very much an uphill battle. It's, of course, been successfully adopted by Black people. Michael B. Jordan, right? But the white folks in the positions of power, that was the whole point, that you have this position of power, you can do this, that is more challenging. So, the other hard piece of it is because it is contract negotiation, there's a certain level of confidentiality, right? So I can't speak in terms of specifics, but I can say that we bring it into every negotiation we have. I can say that.
Anya,
yes.
What
have I had white men tell me I'm taking their job? Yes.
I suspected that might be.
Poor guys.
What gives you hope?
Oof. Honestly, the one flip of this pandemic, which has caused me to be fairly paranoid about people, which is terrible, is this kind of Zoom nation, this, online community that's been created. And what's happened in the DGA, I was talking about that a little bit earlier, is, all of these women of color have kind of come together to try to affect change and work with others. I mean, not just women of color, men of color, everybody that is really interested in changing the paradigm for people of color plus in this industry. But there's been some real hard work among folks to elevate issues that have been prevalent in our working environments for a long time that people haven't had time to address. I'm using quotes because there was time, but just, now they just have nowhere to go. It's like Tommy Shlamy, the president of the DGA right now, is taking time to meet with Sista Brunch women. There's also a male kind of counterpart of ADs called the Dark Side Commission. I don't know why they chose any, but anyway, so Sista Brunch and Dark Side have kind of worked together. There's a bunch of directors that got together. For example, they just instituted there's a hotline for if you're experiencing sexual harassment, but there's no hotline for racial harassment. And they just instituted one. And that is a direct, result of all of these people coming together and saying these are, and then kind of representing everybody that was a part of it, their ideas, their issues, their concerns, creating a list, writing a letter. These are things we need to change.
Yeah.
And really applying pressure and being able to do that now. For example, we have committees in the DGA and there's a Black committee, there's a, African American steering committee. And usually if you go to that, there's maybe 15, 20 people. But now when you have a meeting, you can have 175, 200 people on it, because everyone can join from their home. So it gives me hope that I feel like people have had time to become organized and coordinated so that when we do ascend from this moment into our new normal, we will have this, this base that's been created to help push forward a little bit better. We didn't really have that before.
So it's given everyone time to do their homework.
Yes.
Literally.
Yeah.
So then how concerned are you? Like, I have the concern that now that we're in this time of scarcity because everything's shut down and then we're going to get back to work and everyone's been out of work, that the default will be, oh, let's just hire the white guys we know because we got to get on with it. And we don't have a lot of time for all this ED&I businthis. Because
so interesting.
How much of a danger do you think that is?
I think a little bit. What's one of the things that's interesting is this whole the sports world and their boycotting that's happening, that solidarity that's happening, that removal of themselves. Somebody wrote a letter, like an open letter to Hollywood, that all people of color should also do the same thing in Hollywood. And I was having discussion with a lot of my director friends, and a lot of us were like, we have worked so fucking hard to get 3%. If we remove ourselves now, most of us feel like that wave of white men will just wash in and take it over, and we'll have to fight to gain it back again. So I personally feel like we're going to have to fight to hold on to this. Those of the newcomers in, it's going to be us fucking just grabbing them and trying to pull them in, because I think when we come back out into our new normal, because I don't want to go back to the old normal, but our new normal, there's a fear kind of based operation in Hollywood, not fear, but like comfort based. I want to work with somebody I know that can do the job. I don't want to teach, and so, it's really, I think we're going to be a status quo. I don't know that we're going to fall back, but I think those of us that are working will stay working. It's just getting the new. Yeah, I think we'll hold the line. Yeah, that's really good.
So the argument I see, like with the sports people boycotting, so beautiful, because to me it is, hey, fuckers, if you can't see Black people on the street as human beings, you don't get to enjoy your athletes and your movie stars. Because guess what? It's the same people.
Yeah.
Like, you don't get to have it both ways. I think that was such a powerful statement that needs to just be driven home. Because I think there's a super disconnect, right?
Yeah. 100%.
Right. And I think that is key, is what position of power are you in, right? In the best of ways, athletes are realizing that they can shut shit down by not playing, right? We can't do that. I don't know any woman, and that includes Ava DuVernay, that probably even includes Oprah, right? Who'd be like, I'm going to stop making content, and people just, okay, then we're going to make we're going to make this content. We are in a very different position. And that goes back to the inclusion writer, where one point we always make is, this is not the solution. This is one solution. And it's unfortunate to us that this particular solution relies on well-meaning, well-intentioned white men generally, right? We hate that, like, that's what that it has to be that, they have to be the ones to make this decision, or we don't hate it. It's one tool, right? It is a tool for them. But there's so many other ways, but they are the ones who need to make these sacrifices. That was the point of it, is like, when we have to look at that, it's intersectionality, right? It's like, who's in that highest level of power? You're the one that needs to sacrifice the most, because you're going to be fine. They're the last one, and you're the ones. Anya, I will not let you for a second be like, I'm not going to do that show just to We need, exactly. We need you. And we know from Annenberg studies that when you have a woman hired in the positions that hire other people, the sets are diverse. It's a given.
Changes everything.
Whatever woman, white, Black, whatever woman, when it's a woman, the sets are diverse, right? So we got to stay here.
This is like a weird turn, but like, I want to just bring it up. Did you guys see the Matthew A. Cherry stuff on Twitter? Nickelodeon. Did you see that, Julie?
No.
Interesting.
Matthew Cherry won an Oscar for his beautiful short film called Hair Love. I don't know if you saw it.
Yeah.
Such a lovely film that he worked on for a very long time with a bunch of people. And Nickelodeon came out with a show that was literally the same thing. Like, they copied it down to the cat and the bow and the hair, and had the fucking nerve to put it made by a white woman, and had the nerve to put it out there. Like, here's our new show. Like, who was in who was in their creative department that made it all the way to a point where it was like, here's our new show.
Right. And it goes to show you, right? This is the problem with, tokenizing, right? Is because I'm in these fucking rooms too. And I'm sorry, these two motherfuckers still making bad choices.
Yes.
You will see them in the movies in a little bit. You can fucking bring a horse to water like that, but until we are in the positions of power,
right?
This shit is, and it's mind-boggling, right? It's like, now, after all your fucking statements,
read the room,
right? Read the fucking room. But here's part of the problem with all of this is what's happening now is what was supposed to have happened back in like the good times days, which is, Black content sells, right? Or Asian content sells. And so let's make a bunch of that, even if it's white folks at the helm, but like we're making a bunch of that. Folks still think we're there. Whereas my point is, nah, motherfuckers, we need to be in everything, right? Like everything needs to look like all of us all the time. So when you go to cast your, I'm going to be careful not to make this too clear that I'm talking about something we're working on. But if you go to cast your fucking period piece, you don't come out saying there weren't any Black people at that time. Motherfucker, first of all, yes, there were. And second of all, it's fucking fiction, right? You an actor, they are actors, and we can, and if we had to buy fucking Elizabeth Taylor as Cleopatra, then I can fucking, I can handle, I can handle seeing somebody play a role.
Could we just look at Grey's Anatomy? Has it been on the air 20 years yet?
Yeah.
Right.
It's not that hard.
It's not that hard. It's not that hard, but the mentality is stuck. And that's what leads to, so for example, I was thinking about the voiceover work, the voiceover actors who have stepped down from their roles. And it's like, okay, fantastic, great. But we still only get to voice the Black roles, right? So it's like, I'm going to step down so a Black person can do it. But now Black people are only voicing Black roles. Whereas, this...
Everyone else,
Yeah, women can only direct movies about women and children.
Exactly. And shit will not have changed until that changes. And they are not ready. They're just not...
I will say last night I watched a beautiful movie by Alice Wu called The Half of It. I don't know if you guys have seen it.
It's like seen it on Netflix, right?
Yeah, it's a flip on the Cyrano story. And I was just like, it was so, have you seen it, Julie?
I haven't. Mm-mm.
It was so good. And it did give me hope, because I feel like when people start seeing different stories and realizing how compelling and interesting and how they can relate to those people in the stories, we start to like bridge this gap that you're talking about.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's what TikTok is.
Yeah, 100%.
100%. And
the kids are there.
And they love up on each other. Like, this is in the most beautiful ways. They are about, they're about supporting each other as well. I mean, this is the thing. And this is why we know the last gasp is on its way at some point, is all these marginalized folks are finally starting to get it. Like, they've been trying to divide us, and we really need to be working together.
Right. They've been lying to us.
They've been lying to us, and we are so powerful together. You know what I'm saying? We're so powerful together. So it's these white terror tactics which have repeated throughout history. That I think that's the scary part, and we don't put past this president, right? Is that it's all military power. It's that type of power, capitalist and military power. And that is still true, that they still have that. And that's what tends to send us back into like our fear place.
Well, and it's effective. Like, I'm watching people get shot, and now I'm telling my kids we're done protesting right now, because I'm not sending you out where you're going to get shot.
Entirely, and I couldn't even. With Jacob Blake, I was like, I can't even deal with it.
Yeah.
I can't deal with it. And I never wanted to be in that place, because his parents, his family, people there have to keep dealing with it.
Let's start to ease toward the end. What advice do you have for people coming up behind you?
Your story is the most important thing you have. And it is your in for every one of our guests, it was part of the reason. I think about Anya a lot in this. There's no question in my mind that the reason Anya did so well in her first year is because she tells her story and she's confident in who she is and what she's bringing into this. And so your story allows that to happen, right? Your story allows people to feel like they know you and can trust you and build rapport with you. And that's how you keep going. It's the biggest gift you can give yourself, is to tell your story.
I have like a very like kind of linear minor thing, not minor, but like thing that's just kind of come up over and over for me that I feel like is something that people don't talk about a lot, which is that I don't think you should just have one mentor. I think you should have many mentors. And I think that your expectation from your mentor needs to be, I think the idea of mentor kind of needs to be kind of re-looked at, in that Fanshen is one of my mentors. She's also a friend of mine, and Fanshen isn't my only mentor, and I don't rely on her for everything that is happening in my world to help me fix and call her and, because that can be really overwhelming for people that are mentoring you. So I think that it's important to have a lot of different mentors. I think you can have, by spreading out your mentors, you can have some really amazing people that give you an email every so often or whatever. But yeah, I think don't look at mentorship as like, I need one person to guide me through this. Steven Spielberg will be my mentor and I will become a director. That's not the way. It's get a bunch, get experience from all of them, and remember not to to lay all your woes on these people. They're helping you. You have to take care of yourself. I don't know. That's not very clear, but
yes, it is.
I think it is, and I think it's delicious. And how can people find you? Because I'm now quitting my podcast and I'm just going to listen to you. I listen to you guys all day.
We're so excited about this. We're going to be on your podcast.
I know. It's amazing. We're Sista Brunch Podcast on Instagram.
Yes. And
Sista
then
Brunch,
Twitter, Sista Brunch.
And then you can find us on all the platforms that have podcasts. It's just Sista Brunch. Yep. And it's three girls talking at a table. And then I have my online persona on Instagram is directed by Anya.
Mine on Instagram is @FanshenCD and on Twitter @Fanshen.
Yeah, I'm on Twitter, but I don't use it very much. I just read it. But I'm not reading it today.
Don't read it today. Don't open it.
Oh, God.
Not even. No,
it'll ruin your day.
Yeah. Really.
Thank you guys so much.
Thank you. This was so fun.
This was awesome. Thank you for being patient this morning. And
yes.
I was going to say thank you for what you do, because of all the things that we're talking about, this is where it is, right? Is providing platforms for other women so that they cannot keep saying they can't find us, because here we are. We
got to talk about it. We got to expose it. We got to shine the light.
Yeah. That's an Up With People song, by the way. I'll send it to you.
You're going to heaven,
Julie. The light. Okay.
All right.
You've been listening to The Other 50%, a herstory of Hollywood. I'm Julie Harris Walker. I'd like to thank Fanshen Cox and Anya Adams for sharing their stories. Now go subscribe to Sista Brunch and listen to all their episodes. It's SistaBrunch. And special thanks to Jay Rowe, Danny Rosner, and Allison McQuaid for the music. Please find us on your favorite podcast provider and leave a review. And of course, on our website, theother50%.com, all spelled out in letters, for added features, bios of our guests, and the merch. You can follow us on all the social media platforms. Thanks for listening. See you next time.